Good morning, everybody. This is Zach at it again. I'm your host, Zach Cooley, and I am thrilled and honored to have legendary storyteller and local legend around here for sure, known to all Withfield children and children at heart as Butterfly the Clown, sometimes Mrs. Claus, sometimes the fairy godmother. Judy Farlow is on the phone with me. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Well, we have known each other a long time, and you have been a constant friend in my sweet little girl's life pretty much since the moment she was born. And a highlight of her summer is to come and see Butterfly. But we didn't exactly see Butterfly this time. We saw the fairy godmother. So what was the fairy godmother doing in Withfield?
She was having a fairy program with the children that morning.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what she was doing, was showing the children about fairyland and some fairy magic and that type of thing. I was just glad I got to see her for just a minute because I have seen her every summer since she was a baby.
That's right. She was born in May, and we brought her to you the end of that June that she was born. That was 8 years ago now.
Well, and we were talking, but I was remembering the first time she came because she was to get her face painted, and she was afraid, and she, kind of stepped back and was just real nervous about the whole thing. And she and I talked for a little while, and I think I painted your hand first to show her what it was like, so she wouldn't be afraid.
Right.
And she and I were friends ever since then. I was just so pleased to see her every year.
You bet. And as I said in the article, it really touches my heart. You see thousands of kids every year, but something about her, you remember her every year. And
yeah, but I will be honest with you. I'm terrible with names. I'm absolutely terrible with names. But I remember faces, and I remember her beautiful little face. Absolutely.
Well, her name is Bella.
Yeah, I remember. Now, her name I remember.
Yeah.
There's not many a lot of them I'll forget from one year to the next year, but I remember Bella.
So,
and one of the reasons is because she has such a beautiful name.
Yes, indeed. And it fits her. She is Bella, 100% Bella.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the beginning. Now, great storytellers typically come from great storytellers. Now, is that true of you, or is it just your vivid imagination that made you such a great storyteller, or both?
Probably a combination of both. I was raised in a very rural country town before televisions, and but we didn't have televisions. But the thing was, everybody would sit around and tell stories. I lived in an area that was a fishing village. So a lot of the men would talk about their fishing and farming and things that had happened and all that kind of stuff. And as a child, I was just fascinated by Granddaddy and my next door neighbor, my Loki, they would sit there and tell stories to each other. And as a child, I was fascinated. Then as I grew up, my mother was a professional writer. She wrote stories and books and all kinds of things. And my father was a liar. So... Not to say that badly, okay? I don't mean it that way. But between the two of them, I got that love of story and tall tales and all that kind of thing. So I inherited a lot of it, and then I absorbed a lot of it.
And your mother was a professional writer. What was her name?
Frances Farlow, and she passed away 2 years ago. But up until then, she wrote for the newspaper articles. She had a article that ran, I think, weekly, that was called Gray Matters. It was about people in the area and that kind of thing. She wrote stories, and she and I collaborated on a lot of things. There are a lot of stories that she wrote. She would write them, I would tell them, and then we would change it, together as to what worked and what didn't work. So I have several stories in my, I don't know what you call it, but I have several stories of hers that I tell.
In your mental bank or your repertoire, if you will.
Repertoire. That's the word I was trying to come across with.
Right.
Once in a while, your brain just kind of goes out. It doesn't work right.
Well, in what community did you grow up?
I grew up in two separate places, actually. Up in Virginia. I grew up across the Chesapeake Bay over on the peninsula, Delmarva Peninsula, the southern end of it. And when I was a child, the only way that you could get there from the mainland was by ferry boat. So you can just imagine it was a fairly remote area. The other side, my other grandparents lived up by the Rappahannock River, which again was, at that time, a very remote kind of an area. So I feel really blessed, though, that I had that type of upbringing.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And those two different cultures, yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. With you mentioning that your mother's a professional writer, I was looking to see if you could purchase any of her publications, but
no, she never did. She never did have anything. She won awards for short stories and things like that, but she never had. She had a book that she wanted to get published, but never did get it published.
Oh.
Sadly, yes.
Yeah.
But I have it and use parts of it in my storytelling, so it lives on.
Well, and with the days of electronic publishing, maybe it still can be published one day.
Today, you never can tell.
You know.
Never can tell.
You know, it's not over till it's over, I think.
Right. And like I say, as long as I'm telling the stories, I feel like they live on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, it's what you do. There is so much of, you know, being a clown, you know, being a storyteller. There is such a romanticism involved with that type of work. You know, I don't.
And I'll tell you what, I feel like I am just one of the most blessed people in the world. I really, really do. I laugh about it and joke and say, well, I suffer from multiple personality disorder and just figured out a way to make it work.
Right.
Kind of a little bit the way it is, but I get to play different characters. Sometimes I'm a witch during October and Christmas. I get to be Mrs. Santa. And I just get to play a whole lot of different characters, which is just lots of fun. I get to do ventriloquism and puppetry and storytelling and face painting and balloons and magic. How can you beat that? I mean, really.
Absolutely. And to be able to actually do that for a living. So many people, you know, how many children do we see in movies and stories, and they want to run away with the circus, and that's looked on by their parents as being decadent, and you can't do that. You need to do something that brings money to the table, puts food on your table, and how was it that you were able to really do that for your main source of living?
Well, I was a florist designer for a good long time, and did storytelling and puppetry and things on the side. And then as my business grew with the face painting and the balloons and all that, I was able to let the floristry stuff go. But that's how I did it to start with. I did both things. The floristry was steady money coming in. You know, every week I knew I was going to get a certain paycheck. And then the clown and other stuff was just extra. And luckily, I was able to switch that around. Right.
And you have become, as I said before, a staple here in Whitfield.
I love my Whitfield kids. Now I'm going to tell you something right now. Chicago Festival in Whitfield is one of my very favorite places to go. We have been trying to figure out how many years actually I've been there, and we're not really sure. Somewhere between 15 and 20 years.
Well, I remember I was just hanging out one time with my high school buddies. I was about I don't know, 17, 18. And we were just standing there loafing around, and you came up to us and said, "Excuse me, gentlemen, I need you to move out of the way. This is my space. I need this for for my face painting for my kids to come through. So we meandered on the out of the way, and I've been out of high school 19 years. So
right.
I would.
It's been a while, and isn't it amazing? I tell all my kids it's just amazing because they all grow up, and I stay the same age.
Yeah, that's part of the magic of what you do, I suppose. And
it must be.
And I would say I've seen you as Butterfly, and I've seen you as Mrs. Claus, and I've seen you most recently as the Fairy Godmother. And we just showed that picture to my wife this morning, and she says that is an absolutely beautiful costume. She is absolutely gorgeous in that. I think that's the one she should do. I mean, we were all just taken by that costume. There's something, that is very striking, that character.
Oh, well, thank you. And that's another thing I think that I'm really lucky about. When I was a child, my mother made me learn how to sew. I did not want to learn how to sew when I was little, but it was one of the things that we did in my house. And I have since then called her and said, thank you for making me learn, because I make my own costumes.
Right, and that really, I mean, that Fairy Godmother, we were all three taken aback by that one.
Well, thank you so much. Actually, I've got something going on with the Fairy Godmother. I have a new thing where there's a story conducted, and I don't know how to explain it exactly, but the story will have the child's name in the story. I'll have to send you a sample of it, because there's a story, and then after the story, the child will receive a little box that's from Fairyland, and it has all kinds of little Fairyland trinkets in it. I'll have to send you one. Let me send me your address, and let me send Bella one, because I think she would love it.
Oh, that would be fantastic. We would absolutely love that. Yes, indeed.
You send me your address, and I will do that within the next couple of weeks, because I think she would really like it.
That would be, and she would get to hear the story as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, good.
And like I say, the story is geared so that it has her as the hero in the story.
That is fantastic. Because, I've written and self-published several stories with my daughter as the hero. And what I have done is, because all Bella knows is that Daddy writes stories, and Daddy writes stories about me. It's no big deal. Doesn't everybody do that? Because that's all she knows, So
right.
I'm hoping that one day she's gonna grow up and say, "Hey, everybody didn't do that. My daddy did this for me." But
right.
I read to her when she was in Emily's belly. I read to Emily's belly every night, and then when she came out, when she got here, I wanted to read her stories, and she's like, no, I don't want you to read me. But she would take the book and read me a story, even before she could read. She would read. She would make the story up. She wanted to read to me, but she didn't want me to read to her. So maybe that's a good sign. Maybe we've got another storyteller coming up.
Absolutely and positively. That's the best. To me, that's the best thing with children is you read to them first, and then they pick up that love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's important. Yeah.
Are there any other characters that you do other than Mrs. Claus and the Fairy Godmother and Butterfly?
Oh, Lord, yes. Let me see.
All right. Well, let's cover some of those.
If I can say it, Calamity Jane for a Western theme. I play Luna Moon for a lady who's from outer space. I play, I can't remember my monkey lady. And Hexalin the Witch. And let's see, what's the other ones? Rainbow, and who travels the world and tells stories from all over the world. And Rosie O'Grady for St. Patrick's Day, and the Gypsy Fortune Teller. Let me see. and there's more, and I can't think of them. I have all kinds of puppet characters. I bring out different ones at different times. I have Roger Rabbit, who is there for Easter, and I have one of my newest ones is Tootsie, who is my senior citizen lady who goes into assisted livings and talks about being an old lady and things like that. So I think I have a whole lot of fun with it. I really, really do. And I'm very lucky, I think, in that the thing that I am the most proud of is that at this point in my life, I can say that I have entertained over 15,000 children.
Oh, man, isn't that wonderful? And what?
To me, that is absolutely the best thing to think about, that I have touched the lives in some way of about 15,000 children.
And I'm so glad you mentioned the people in nursing homes, because they so need that human connection,
Oh, absolutely. They, a lot of folks who are in assisted livings and stuff don't have family.
Right.
So to have someone come in and tell stories, and I can tell stories that they can relate to. I tell a story about an outhouse, blowing up and different things like that
sure.
Their generation can relate to, which is wonderful. And I get smiles, and I'd like to say I'm just so lucky, just so blessed.
Well, and in turn, you bless so many other people. You bless my family. You know us year after year, and that's a blessing to all of us. And I am blessed to have known you and called you a friend for many, many years. I think that the gift you give to people is so important. Coming back to the nursing home thing, I will admit that has always been my biggest fear in life. When I reach a point where family can no longer care for me, and that ending up being an only option, that is something that a fear that's always in the back of my mind, and I call it life being over way before your existence. And that's how I feel like most of those people feel. And for you to be able to reach them and touch them and let them know that they are not forgotten and that they are still here and they are still cared about, that is so important.
And one of the things to me that is, and thank you for that compliment, it just warms my heart, makes me feel so good to know that I'm bringing happiness to people. That's really important to me. And for the nursing home people or the assisted living people, I think one of the things that I do that I'm so pleased with too is I let them know that they have a story. They all have a story. So when I'm going, I tell them my stories, I will get them to relate to me some of their stories. And that is just so wonderful.
Yeah, and what you can learn from older people is just astounding. And
I have to share one with you real quick.
Yeah.
I was at a assisted living, and we were singing the song, and after the song, or after the session, one of the assistants came up to me and she said, "This is so-and-so." I don't even remember her name now, but she said, "This is so-and-so, knows how to play that on the piano." And I thought, "Oh, that's wonderful. Would she play it for us?" So she played the song, and she turned around and she said, the assistant said, she taught Elvis Presley. And I asked the lady about it. I said, "You tried to teach Elvis Presley, you taught Elvis Presley piano?" She said, "No, honey, I tried." She said, "But that's why he played the guitar."
Oh, wow.
And I said, "Well, how did you know him?" And she said she went to the same church as him. So see, if you go in there and you talk to some of those people, you find out they have some marvelous stories.
And to think that you would have never, people would have never known such amazing things because they just don't ask. And what we miss out on by omission is really, as a writer and as a parent, I am so I get so irritated at these toys that light up and make noise and do all of the imagining for the child. You know, my daughter's sitting here right now on a tablet, and I'm getting ready to go pull her off of because and I have to give it to Bella. You know, she doesn't do a lot of electronics. She'll do electronics when the sun is not shining, but we have a beautiful backyard and we go outside, and she used to make up all kinds of games that we'd play, and she still has a great imagination. I have to give it to her on that. But these kids are so overstimulated that they don't leave room for imagination.
And that's a sad thing. It really is.
And to have an imagination, you have to allow a child room, space to let it grow, to let them fill that space themselves.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. Because everybody can do that. And to me, there's nothing more alluring, even if I've heard the story 100 times. When I was little, there was nothing I liked better than my great aunt. I would curl up in bed, and my great aunt would tell me, trying to get me to go to sleep. Once upon a time, there was a little boy, and his name was Zachary Gray Cooley, and he loved the color red. And she would just build from that, and I would think that was the greatest thing in the world, that I was in this story, And those are the high points of people's childhood. And I guarantee you that when Bella grows up, she will say that highlights of my summer were when my parents took me to the Chautauqua Festival, and I got to see and hear a story and get a face painting and a balloon from Butterfly.
Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, one more important question, or a couple more anyway, I must ask before we hang up. Do you have children and grandchildren?
Yes.
Good. Excellent.
I have 7 grandchildren. I just acquired 3 new ones. My daughter remarried, and her husband has 3 children, and she had 3 children, so now they are the Brady Bunch, which is wonderful. And my oldest grandson, who is all grown up. No great-grandchildren yet, though. I'm not that old.
Oh, right. Well, I'm very fortunate in that I had my great-grandmother till I was almost 30 years old.
Oh, how lucky you were. How lucky you were, yes.
Before my great-grandmother passed away, she met her great-great-granddaughter.
Wow. My mother had that opportunity too, which is wonderful. But my mother was 3 months away from being 99 when she passed away. So luckily she had children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and a few great-great-grandchildren. So that was wonderful.
Yeah. To meet a great-great-grandparent, I think, was extraordinary. And Granny Rose and I, we were very close. And she was a wicked lady like me. I'm a wicked guy. So we would what I miss most about her is just being up to no good. Granny Rose and I used to sit in Chautauqua, like directly in front of you at the gazebo. So you may have seen us over the years when we were sitting at Chautauqua together. But anyway, so many great memories that you are tied to, and I'm so glad that you have grandchildren and great-grandchildren to pass your stories to. Do you know when we will see you in the Whistville area next?
I will be in Whistville, as a matter of fact, I believe, not this coming Friday, but I believe it's the following Friday. I will be at the library doing storytelling, so we will invite everyone for the adults who have done the summer reading program.
It's always a great privilege and honor to talk to you. Thank you for taking this much time with me this morning.
Oh, thank you so very much for the call. I really, really you have just made my heart sing, knowing that I'm that important to your life.
Oh, well, you certainly are, and I'm glad to have an opportunity to tell you that personally. So, again, I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have.
I have, and one other thing, you be sure to give your wife and Bella hugs and kisses for me.
Oh, you bet. Absolutely, I will do that.
All right, thank you so very much. You have a wonderful afternoon.
You too, and lots of love to you and yours.
Thank you so very much. You have a great day.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.